OK, right, so look, we have the sentence. It looks like the total, this is complex because there are a whole range of charges ranging from 3 murders to multiple attempted murders, of course, of the other children that were at that dance class at the time, and adults, plus possession of a bladed instrument, plus the ricin charge, plus the Al Qaeda manual charge, and so on. So a lot to unpack there. The upshot, ladies and gentlemen, is that Axel Rudakubana will serve a minimum of 51 years. Now, I have to say, some of you will be disappointed with that. That means that he effectively can be out when he is 69 years old. Of course, as the judge has just made very, very clear, that is up to the parole board. Some of us don't have a lot of faith in parole boards, but we are looking a long way off. Let's not comment on that too much, but it will be up to a parole board in 51 years' time to decide if Axel Rudakubana should be released. What's your reaction to that? What's your reaction to the sentence? What's your reaction to the fact that because of his age, he is not able to be sentenced to a whole of life term, a whole of life tariff, which means he would never come out of prison? Effectively here, he could be out at the age of 69. That's a long, long time away. My opinion on this is that if you are old enough to wield a blade and to commit the atrocities that Axel Rudakubana has, particularly actually when there's this huge debate now about voting age and when you're deemed an adult and therefore responsible. Well, if you can vote at 16 in the future, I know that's not law yet, but if you can, and you can wield a blade as this evil monster has done, then you should be sentenced as an adult. Do you agree with me? 0344 499 1000. Let's just go back to Peter as well. Sort of keep you waiting there, Peter. What's your reaction to the sentencing?
I think His Honour Justice Goose has handed down as long a sentence as the guidelines and the legislation would allow him to do. So I commend him for that. It was 52 years minus 175 days that this monster has already served in custody. So whilst it's far from perfect, he did, of course, the judge, reiterate that it is enormously unlikely that Rudakubana will ever be freed. Although what, of course, we and generations to come need to remember is that people who are not already born yet might actually sit on Rudakubana's parole hearing if he lives for another 51 and a bit years. So people will have to be reminded of the absolute murderous reign of terror that he committed in that dance school that dreadful morning. And it must be handed down to generations that follow us. Sadly, they will have to hear his name. They will have to be familiar with his name, because it must be passed down through the generations to reiterate, to remind, to let everybody know that this monster, should he live that long, must never, ever taste freedom.
Yeah, Judge Goose, as you say, has done everything that he can. He certainly has not been liberal with the sentence at all. And when I talked about complexity just now, obviously what I am referring to is the fact that obviously there are multiple charges. There are multiple aspects to consider in terms of sentencing guidelines, the minimum, the maximum, so-called mitigation, although I think Judge Goose was having very little of that in terms of mitigation, particularly when it comes to the guilty plea really making no difference because, of course, it was so late in the day. But the upshot, yes, 51 years. But I guess my point, Pete, is that there will be people, and our switchboard has just lit up, by the way. And if you want to get involved with this, with your opinion, your two penneth, whether you agree that that was severe enough or not, 0344 499 1000, or obviously you can text us as ever, 87222 plus the word talk. I think some people would be saying, as I've just, I guess, set out, that my opinion is that the sentencing guidelines, whilst 51 years net is a long, long, long time, I think some listening to this, watching this, some, including victims' families, will have felt more reassured from a judicial, from a justice perspective, to have heard that unequivocally Axel Rudakubana is never coming out of jail. So do the sentencing guidelines have to change, Peter?
And I put myself firmly in that category. Of course, it is scandalous and it is wrong that the judge could not impose a whole life term, but that is not the judge's fault.
No.
It is the fault of the Sentencing Act of 2020 and the Sentencing Council, who hand down sentencing guidelines in conjunction with acts of Parliament.
Yeah.
So, of course, it is wrong that he wasn't given a whole life term. The judge did the best that he could do with his hands tied behind his back. But, of course, this utter monster should be incarcerated for the rest of his life. In all likelihood, he probably will.
And Peter, can we just pause for a second? Sorry,
when you say it would be good.
Yeah, Pete, sorry to interrupt you again, but it is definitely one of those shows, I'm afraid. On the screen now, for those of you that are watching on YouTube, you will see this is CCTV footage that's now been released of the day of that atrocity in Southport. We're seeing images here from CCTV, both in the town centre, I guess as it is, but also in the taxi that Axel Rudakubana got to that Southport dance class. We're seeing him, and this is hard to watch, frankly, because not only is it him, many won't want to see an image of Axel Rudakubana on the basis of what he's done, but this, of course, is gruelling stuff, I have to say. Hard to watch because we're actually now seeing him going into the building, and then, of course, we all know what happens next. So, look, tough stuff to watch. But I guess, Peter, to your point, if we do not show some of this in 51 years' time, there won't be a record of this monster and his hideous, evil, horrendous deed for that parole board to look back on and say, I know it's been 51 years, you ain't ever coming out, mate.
And if I have grandchildren, I will tell them this cowardly monster's name, because who knows, one day they might end up sitting on the parole board and they will listen, potentially, if number one, he lives that long, and if he is granted a parole hearing. So yes, sadly, future generations are going to have to become familiar with this coward's name. And he was a coward. Look at his behaviour in court today.
Well, of course he's a coward. He went after young kids, you know. He didn't go after a rugby team, did he? He didn't go after people that could fight back. He went after innocent 6-, 7- and 9-year-olds. What a disgusting... I mean, frankly, I don't know how we ended up sharing a planet with this individual. Do you?
He is clearly an utter monster. And we now know, because Yvette Cooper has launched a public inquiry into this murderous acts by this coward. And we will hear, sadly, I feel, we may well hear that opportunities were missed and lessons have been learned.
Well, look, we need to talk about that, Peter, but I no time now, unfortunately. I suspect you will be back on this channel tomorrow, Peter Bleksley, as ever, with a very insightful analysis there.